Hi, I'm Gary Zacharias. I want to welcome you back to our video series talking about English essentials. We've covered the single paragraph, we've covered the multi-paragraph essay. Just wrapped that up last time with session number 8. We were talking about a good checklist to make sure you're following the things that ought to create a really nice paper. And I thought we would switch gears now and start talking about the foundational issues of writing, which is sentence level work. So we're talking grammar, punctuation, the mechanics of English. If you get those wrong, you can have a great idea, but it might be so hard to read that the person reading it just gives up or says, wow, this is somebody who really doesn't understand English. So if you have that textbook and you can get it for free, it's a PDF I'll send to you, and just email me. I'm on page 40, and it talks about parts of speech. So let's start there. A lot of people say, well, why would we learn parts of speech? Who cares what a noun or a pronoun is? But later on, if I say, hey look, this can't be a subject of a sentence because it's not a noun or a pronoun. If you don't know nouns and pronouns, it makes it pretty tough. If I say this is an adjective clause later, and you say, I don't even know what an adjective is. See, there's some terminology that we need to get across. It's just like any field of study. If you study geology, they're going to tell you there's sedimentary and metamorphic rock. Well, what is that? And igneous, there's the third type. And so every subject area has its vocabulary. So, sorry, but English has it as well. So page 40, parts of speech. Let's start with some of the easier ones, nouns. Nouns are people or places or ideas. I gave you a list. Democracy. You say, I can't see democracy. That's true, but it is a concept, it's an idea, so therefore it's considered a thing, and people and places and items like that. So I won't spend much time. Most people have no problem figuring out nouns. If you know what a noun is, a pronoun is pretty easy. A pronoun is a substitute for the noun. So if I want to talk about San Diego, that's near where I live, I can mention in the first sentence, I live near San Diego. My next sentence might say it. Well, you go back immediately in your head, you go back and you go, let's see, what was he talking about? What's this it business? It takes you back to the first sentence, oh, San Diego. Or I say, the President of the United States, and then I say he. Okay, so that takes you back to what I was just talking about, President of the United States. So we have a ton of pronouns. I gave you a big old list here. It's a little confusing. Sometimes there are two pronouns that refer to the same person. Like sometimes I can talk about myself and I can say I, or I could say me, and we'll talk about why there are these two different ones. So it's just for today, as long as you understand what pronouns are. It's good enough. Let's go to verbs. Here's where it gets a little tricky, a little tough. So hang in there. I said it can be an action. There's 3 types. That's what makes this one a little tough. It can be an action. Most people have no difficulty seeing that, but it can be an action, or it can be what's called a helper or an auxiliary verb. Okay, we'll get to that in just a second. Or something called a linking verb. Oh, great, now we got 3 types. Yeah, we do. But hang in there, it's really not too bad. The first one is just a gimme, right? Everybody understands that. Action words are verbs. So if you say, he carried the ball. If you say, she scored the goal. If you say, she delivered a great speech. You've got actions there. People are carrying, people are scoring goals. People are giving great speeches. Those are action words. So I just put a few down here. Drive, look, argue, study. Those are all action words. Those are obviously going to be verbs. Here's where it gets a little dicey. You can also have a verb that completes, or sometimes called an auxiliary verb. It completes the verb. So here's an example. I have down here has. Okay, if I say study, that's a verb. That's looking at material, trying to learn it. But when did that happen? In the past, then she has studied. What if it's right now? Let's take that word study. She is studying. Well, if you say, well, she's going to do that tomorrow, then you say she will be studying. So in a sense, you have 3 words that are all part of that verb. Study is the action, but will and be are considered part of the verb. So I've got a list here for you, and you can just check them all out. So if you don't have the book, you can just go online and type in helper or completer. They go by different names, auxiliary verbs, and you'll see a ton of examples. One last type of verb, the third type, is called a linking verb. Well, what do links do? Links join things, but they're not actions. So here's an example. She is tall. Is there an action word in there? She is tall. There's nothing going on. There's no action at all. But every sentence has a verb. So you go, wait a minute, where's the verb? Well, she is what the sentence is about. Then there's a description of her as tall. And guess what's happening? That little word is going to be the link. It's going to join those two together. What is she? She is tall. That's the same person we're talking about. That's called a linking verb. I give you examples of them here. Am, are, is, was, were, being. So let's try a couple more examples. He is, fill in the blank, smart. He is fast. He is the class president. Do you notice there's no action in any of those words? But you're saying he and class president go together. He and fast, same person. He is smart, same person. We're talking about the same one. So those are called linking verbs. If you can remember that linking part especially, that's a little tough. Okay, let's keep going. Number 4, you've got things called adverbs. I mean, look at that. It's got the word verb right in there. They describe verbs, sometimes adjectives, but most likely verbs. You know how you recognize a lot of them? Let me give you a list here and see if you start noticing something. Usually, really, rarely, occasionally. What do you hear? Do you hear the ly? Lys, the minute you see an ly, you're done. You just wrote an adverb. Really, unusually, quietly, softly, tenderly, eagerly. Those things are all lys. Now, not every adverb is an ly. Look at my example down here. Not. Really? Yeah, not's an adverb. You know what it did? It just canceled your verb, didn't it? She did not study. Oh, that's an adverb. You just canceled the verb. Sometimes, I wrote the word sometimes down here. Notice that it does describe actions. How often does she study? Sometimes. How often does he play with the dog? Sometimes. So you're describing the action. Those are adverbs. All right, we'll keep moving. Number 5, most people have no trouble with this, but adjectives describe nouns. So if you say, I just give you some examples here, the black suitcase, the noisy child, the small room, the beautiful dancer, all those words like heavy and beautiful and black and small, those describe nouns. And if anything describes a noun is going to be an adjective. Well, how are you doing? That's 5 of the 7. You hanging in there? Okay, hope so. Number 6, a preposition. I want you to break that word down a little bit though. And look, I see pre and I see position. So position words, many, not all, many preposition are position words. Here's my list. These are not all of them, but there are a lot of them. Let's take above. Okay, so he put the game above the shelf. Right, so that's, do you see that's a position word? How about they moved across the room? Do you see the position there? He walked after the party. That doesn't make any sense. He left after the party. At, before, between, by, down, from, in, near, of, on and on and on. So many of these words have to do with where things are in relationship to other things. So if I say she sat in front of him, right? I'm using prepositions there, in front of. So there are tons of them. Think, somebody once said, whatever you can do with a cloud is what a preposition could be. You can go through a cloud, you can be beneath the cloud, you can go into the cloud, you can come out of a cloud, you can be above the cloud, you can go around the cloud. So all those words are prepositions. There are a couple that are not location kinds of words. For example, look at my examples of, OF. One of us. One of us. That's not a location. It just says there's several and it's one of us. Okay, so there are a few that you just need to know. I don't know a shortcut on that. You just need to know them. The real definition of a preposition is a word that's before a noun or pronoun. They come before nouns or pronouns, and they form a little phrase that'll modify something that's going on in the rest of the sentence. So keep that in mind. I'll show you some examples in a minute. And then the last word. We'll end on something pretty easy, okay? Conjunction. Look at that word junction. What's a junction? A junction is where two things cross over, like a freeway junction. Wires can join in a junction. So what's a junction? It's a meeting place. It's a connecting device. Sometimes I talk to my students and I'll say, you know what a conjunction is? It's Scotch tape. Scotch tape of English. It tapes things together. And there's a little phrase that you can use, fanboys or boys fan. I've heard it either way. Fanboys, that stands for the letters of the conjunctions in English. There they are. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. You've got 7 of those things. They act as joining words. Think about and. There's a perfect example. Jack and Jill went up the hill. You're joining two people together. She studied and she did well on the test. You're linking now not just 2 words, but 2 parts, right? She studied, she did well on the test, and is the joiner word. So there's your 7 parts of speech, 7 of them. And you're just going to have to go back, you're going to have to refresh, think about it more often. Later on I'll be using, like I said, phrases like, no subject is ever found in a prepositional phrase. Well, if you don't know prepositions, you better go back and take a look. I may talk about adverb clauses. You need to go back and refresh yourself about what an adverb is here. So, how are we doing on these, okay? Let me give you a couple of examples to mess around with. Page 41 has some sentences that are not marked at all. It's just a sentence. But I bet you could go through and if you really studied that previous page, you could nail almost all of those words as a certain part of speech. Let's just do maybe a couple here. Number 1 says, Jim Smith was flying in a World War II bomber. And they do come once in a while, if you ever have a chance. There are a few organizations that keep and maintain and watch very carefully over some huge World War II bombers, and they'll fly into airports all across the nation, and for a pretty hefty chunk of change you can go up. But even if you don't want to do that, you can at least tour the airplane. It's pretty amazing. Some of these big 4-engine bombers that America had in World War II, and they come to different airports all across the nation. So back to the sentence, Jim Smith was flying in a World War II bomber. Let's think about that and let's break it down. Jim Smith. It's a person, must be a noun. And it's acting as the subject of the sentence because this is who it's about. Jim Smith was flying. Do you hear an action there? Flying. But is it right now? Is it in the future? No, it's in the past. He was flying. That's that little helper, auxiliary verb. So those are 2 words acting together as the verb of the sentence. So we have a subject and we have a verb. Every sentence has a subject and verb. It has an actor or something that's being spotlighted, and then something is said about them. So Jim Smith is silly. That's a sentence, so you're describing this guy. But here we go. So let's just continue. Jim Smith was flying. Now he's in something. Do you hear the location there? The position there? That's a preposition. He's in something. And prepositions don't exist by themselves. They have nouns or pronouns that go together and become this little chunk of English, this little phrase. So he's in what? A bomber, World War II bomber. So that's his location. So we have our subject, we have the verb, we get this little it's called prepositional phrase. It means several words that are acting like a little chunk. He's in the bomber. Got one more phrase for you there. World War II. Do you notice it's describing the bomber? What kind of bomber is it? A monstrous bomber, a dilapidated bomber, a jet bomber? No, it says a World War II bomber. So World War II is acting as a descriptor for the word bomber. What part of speech is bomber, do you think? Okay, if you said noun, got it. What describes nouns? Adjectives. So we have World War II as an adjective here because it's describing what kind of bomber. So let's put it all together. Jim Smith, noun, was flying, verb. In a bomber, prepositional phrase. What kind of bomber? World War II, adjective. What part of speech is bomber? Noun. So there you go. There are all the parts of speech for a single sentence. So I'm not going to take the time to go through the rest of these. You can email me if you have some questions about them. But just keep going over these. When you're reading a newspaper, when you're reading a magazine, when you're looking at something online, see if you can start hitting the parts of speech. Which ones are the tough ones for you? If you read a whole paragraph and you say, I couldn't find any adverbs, I bet there were some there. You just need to go look back and see what adverbs are. Or you say, I can't find any prepositions. People use prepositions all the time. You must not just have it figured out yet, so just go back to the previous page. Well, I hope that's helpful. Next time we're going to tackle the problem that people run into big time in English. It's fragments and splices and run-on sentences. It messes people up so much. So I want to spend an episode on that. So again, thank you. This was number 9, video number 9. And look at the others if you want some reminders about paragraphing and essay writing. So I hope to see you next time. Thanks.